The excitement at Stanford University was palpable. It was a crisp autumn evening, and students were flocking toward the grand auditorium, eager to hear from the man who had reshaped the future, Elon Musk. The event had been sold out within minutes. The moment the university announced that Musk would be addressing students about his struggles before success, the campus had been buzzing with anticipation. Some students had even camped outside the venue overnight, desperate to secure front-row seats. Inside the packed hall, a hush fell over the audience as Elon Musk walked onto the stage, dressed casually in a black t-shirt and jeans, the uniform of a man who never cared for appearances but was obsessed with changing the world. He adjusted the mic, scanned the young faces in front of him, and began. I know many of you are here to hear about rockets, AI, and the future of humanity. But tonight, I want to talk about something far more important, struggle. Because without struggle, there is no success. The audience leaned in, captivated. If you're sitting here thinking that I was born into success, let me tell you, my journey was anything but easy. The auditorium was silent, waiting for the story to unfold. The tough childhood and leaving South Africa. Elon took a deep breath and continued, his voice steady but filled with emotion. I was born in Pretoria, South Africa, in 1971. My childhood, well, it wasn't the happiest. I was an introverted kid, obsessed with books, computers, and science. But that wasn't the norm back then. I was bullied badly. I was once beaten so severely that I had to be hospitalized. It was brutal. The audience gasped. They had heard bits and pieces about Musk's childhood, but hearing it from him firsthand made it real. I found solace in programming. When I was 12, I created a video game called Blaster and sold it for $500. That moment changed my life. I realized that technology could not only be my escape but also my future. But South Africa, it wasn't the place where I could build my dreams. The apartheid era made everything complicated, and I wanted to be in a place where innovation thrived, America. He paused and looked at the students in front of him. So I left. I left my home, my family, everything I knew. I went to Canada first with barely any money, doing odd jobs like cleaning boilers and working at a farm. I was a nobody, just another kid with big dreams and no resources. The students were hooked. Elon Musk, the billionaire, the genius, was once a struggling immigrant. It was terrifying. But here's something I want all of you to remember. If you want to achieve something great, you have to take risks. You have to step into the unknown. Elon took a deep breath and continued, his voice steady but filled with emotion. I was born in Pretoria, South Africa, in 1971. My childhood, well, it wasn't the happiest. I was an introverted kid, obsessed with books, computers, and science. But that wasn't the norm back then. I was bullied badly. I was once beaten so severely that I had to be hospitalized. It was brutal. The audience gasped. They had heard bits and pieces about Musk's childhood, but hearing it from him firsthand made it real. I found solace in programming. When I was 12, I created a video game called Blaster and sold it for $500. That moment changed my life. I realized that technology could not only be my escape but also my future. But South Africa, it wasn't the place where I could build my dreams. The apartheid era made everything complicated, and I wanted to be in a place where innovation thrived, America. He paused and looked at the students in front of him. So I left. I left my home, my family, everything I knew. I went to Canada first with barely any money, doing odd jobs like cleaning boilers and working at a farm. I was a nobody, just another kid with big dreams and no resources. The students were hooked. Elon Musk, the billionaire, the genius, was once a struggling immigrant. It was terrifying. But here's something I want all of you to remember. If you want to achieve something great, you have to take risks. You have to step into the unknown. Musk took a sip of water and continued, his voice filled with nostalgia. When I finally made it to North America, I had almost no money. I stayed in Canada for a while and then transferred to the University of Pennsylvania. It was a great school, but I was broke. Really broke. My roommate and I had to get creative just to survive. A few students chuckled, expecting one of Musk's legendary survival stories. We lived in a tiny apartment and couldn't afford much, so we turned it into a nightclub on weekends. Charged people $5 at the door, played loud music, and served cheap drinks. That's how we made rent. I slept on the couch most nights, when I wasn't up all night studying physics and economics. Some students nodded, relating to the struggles of college life. But Musk wasn't done yet. I knew that education was just part of the journey. I spent most of my time thinking about the future, the internet, space, renewable energy. These ideas fascinated me. But thinking wasn't enough. I had to act. He leaned forward, making eye contact with the students in the front row. If there's one thing you take away from this talk, let it be this: don't wait for the perfect time. There's never a perfect time. If you have an idea, chase it now. The room was filled with young minds absorbing every word. I knew that to build something great, I needed to be where innovation was happening. That meant one thing: Silicon Valley. The students knew what was coming next. The wild startup years. The sacrifices. The make-or-break moments. Elon Musk adjusted his stance, looking at the eager faces before him. So, after graduating, I got into a PhD program at Stanford University. But within 2 days, I realized something. I didn't want to study. I wanted to build. The internet was just taking off, and I knew it was my chance. So, I dropped out. A few students gasped. Dropping out of Stanford? That was a bold move. I teamed up with my brother, Kimball, and we started Zip2, an online city guide. But let me tell you, starting a company is not glamorous at all. Musk smiled, remembering those hard days. We couldn't afford an apartment, so we rented a tiny office. And when I say tiny, I mean really tiny. I slept on the couch, showered at the YMCA, and lived on $1 a day, mostly eating hot dogs and oranges. There were no vacations, no weekends. Just work, work, and more work. The audience was silent. This was the side of success that no one talked about. Most people think success happens overnight. That's a myth. Every entrepreneur you admire, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, they all went through years of struggle. And honestly, most startups fail. The only reason Zip2 survived was because we refused to quit. He leaned forward, his expression serious. If you're working on something right now and it feels impossible, that means you're on the right track. If it were easy, everyone would do it. The students nodded. They could feel the weight of his words. After 4 years of struggle, Zip2 was finally acquired by Compaq for $307 million. It was my first big win. But instead of retiring, I took all the money and went all in on something even riskier, X.com, which later became PayPal. The audience knew this was where things would get even crazier. Musk took a deep breath, glancing around the auditorium. After selling Zip2, I could have taken the money and lived comfortably. But that's not who I am. I wanted to do something bigger. The banking system was broken, and I thought, why not fix it? So, I started X.com, an online financial services company. The students knew where this was going: PayPal. We were building what would later become PayPal, but it was chaos. Competitors were everywhere, and the internet was still young. Fraud was a huge problem. We were losing millions trying to fight it. And if that wasn't enough, I got kicked out of my own company. A murmur spread through the audience. They had heard about this, but hearing it from Musk himself made it hit differently. It happened when I was on my honeymoon. The board decided they didn't want me as CEO anymore. When I landed, I wasn't just out of the company. I was out of my own dream. It was brutal. Musk paused, his face unreadable. Most people would have given up. But here's the thing: failure is only permanent if you let it be. Instead of feeling sorry for myself, I stayed on as an investor and helped turn PayPal into a success. And in 2002, eBay acquired PayPal for $1.5 billion. Some students whispered among themselves. Musk had every reason to quit after that. He had made his money. He could have retired. But he didn't. Now I had hundreds of millions of dollars. And you know what I did? I put every single dollar into my next ventures: Tesla, SpaceX, and SolarCity. He smiled, shaking his head. People called me insane. Maybe they were right. Because what happened next? It nearly destroyed me. The students were on the edge of their seats. Musk exhaled sharply, as if reliving the hardest years of his life. So, after PayPal, I had all this money. But instead of living a comfortable life, I put everything into my two biggest dreams, SpaceX and Tesla. Everyone told me I was crazy. And honestly, maybe I was. A few students chuckled nervously. Let's start with SpaceX. I wanted to make space travel affordable. NASA wasn't doing enough, and private companies didn't even dare try. I thought, why not? But rockets are expensive, and I wasn't a billionaire anymore. I was just a guy burning through his savings, launching one failure after another. His voice grew intense. The first 3 SpaceX launches all failed. Each rocket explosion meant millions of dollars down the drain. Investors lost faith. The media mocked us. Even my closest friends told me to quit. He paused, letting that sink in. Then there was Tesla. Electric cars? Back in the 2000s, everyone thought they were a joke. The auto industry laughed at us. We had one prototype, no supply chain, and we were losing money fast. His expression darkened. By 2008, both Tesla and SpaceX were on the brink of bankruptcy. I had to make the toughest decision of my life. Split my remaining money between the 2 companies or let one die. If the next rocket failed, it was over. If Tesla ran out of cash, it was over. The students sat in stunned silence. I remember sitting alone on Christmas Eve, completely broke. The money was gone. Every investor had turned away. My dreams were about to collapse. He looked up, locking eyes with the audience. And then, everything changed. Musk took a deep breath, the memory still vivid in his mind. It was December 23, 2008. I had put everything into SpaceX and Tesla. There was no money left. I was literally borrowing money from friends to pay my rent. I had one last shot, a 4th rocket launch. If it failed, SpaceX was done. If Tesla didn't get funding, it was dead too. The audience was hooked. Then, on December 28, 2008, something incredible happened. The 4th SpaceX launch succeeded. We had done it. We had reached orbit. And just days later, NASA awarded SpaceX a $1.6 billion contract. That saved the company. Students erupted into applause. It was like a Hollywood movie. But this was real. But Tesla was still on the edge. The auto industry crashed and we were out of cash. I had to beg investors to give us one last chance. On Christmas Eve 2008, at the very last moment, we secured funding that saved Tesla. He smiled, shaking his head. That was the hardest year of my life. I thought I was finished. But here's the lesson: when everything looks impossible, when you're seconds away from losing it all, that's when you have to push harder than ever. The students sat in awe. After that, Tesla grew. SpaceX grew. And years later, we launched a car into space because why not? The auditorium erupted in laughter and applause. But success is never final. The fight never stops. Musk let the applause die down before continuing, his voice steady but filled with conviction. Most people think once you reach success, the hard part is over. But that's not true. The hard part never ends. He paced the stage, looking into the crowd. After 2008, we had survived. But now we had to prove we could thrive. Tesla still wasn't profitable. SpaceX had a NASA contract, but we needed to make reusable rockets work, or we'd be another failed space company. His eyes burned with intensity. I was all in. Tesla built the Model S, the car that changed everything. But guess what? People still doubted us. The media called us a joke. The oil industry hated us. And yet we kept going. The students were hanging on to his every word. At SpaceX, we kept pushing too. People said reusable rockets were impossible. That no private company could launch and land a rocket. Well, in 2015, we did it. The Falcon 9 landed for the first time. That changed everything. He smiled slightly. You see, every time we did something big, people said, it can't be done. And every time we proved them wrong. Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, the Boring Company, all of them started as crazy ideas. But crazy ideas are what change the world. His voice softened. And here's what I want you to remember. Never stop questioning. Never stop building. Never stop dreaming. Because the moment you do, that's when you stop growing. The room was electric with inspiration. But the journey isn't just about success. It's about something much bigger. Musk took a deep breath, his voice shifting from personal struggles to a vision for humanity. Look, I'm not here just to tell you my story. I'm here because your story matters. Every person in this room has the potential to do something extraordinary. But the real question is, what will you do with it? The students sat in deep thought. We live in a time where technology is advancing faster than ever. AI, space travel, renewable energy, these aren't just cool ideas. They are the future. And it's up to you, your generation, to take them further. He pointed at the audience. Imagine a world where humans live on Mars, where diseases are cured with AI, where cars drive themselves, and energy is limitless. This isn't science fiction. This is what we are building right now. Musk's passion was contagious. But innovation requires courage. It requires people who are willing to take risks, to fail over and over again, and still get back up. It requires people like you. His voice grew softer but more intense. If I had listened to the people who doubted me, I would have never started Tesla. If I had quit after the first rocket explosion, SpaceX wouldn't exist. And if I had given up in 2008, none of this would have happened. He paused, scanning the crowd. So ask yourself, what's stopping you? Is it fear? Is it failure? Because let me tell you something, fear is temporary, but regret lasts forever. The students felt the weight of his words. This isn't just about money, success, or companies. It's about pushing humanity forward. And if we don't do it, who will? The room was silent, filled with determination. And that brings me to one final thought. Musk took one last deep breath, standing still at the center of the stage. At the end of the day, success isn't about being lucky. It's about creating your own luck. It's about waking up every morning and doing the hard things, even when you don't feel like it. His voice softened, filled with sincerity. I didn't get here because I was the smartest person in the room. I got here because I was willing to work harder than anyone else. I was willing to fail more than anyone else. And most importantly, I was willing to never give up. The auditorium was silent, hanging on to every word. Some of you will go on to build incredible companies. Some of you will push the limits of science, technology, and medicine. Some of you will create art, ideas, and movements that change the world. But all of you, every single one of you, will face obstacles. You'll have moments where you want to quit. He paused, locking eyes with students in the front row. When that moment comes, remember this night. Remember that success is not a straight line. It's a messy, painful, and unpredictable journey. But if you keep going, if you refuse to quit, you will achieve things beyond your wildest imagination. A deep silence filled the room, the weight of his words sinking in. So go out there, take risks, build, innovate, fail, and then get back up. Because the future isn't written yet. It's waiting for you to create it. Musk stepped back from the microphone. The room erupted into thunderous applause, students standing, cheering, inspired beyond words. Some had tears in their eyes. Others clenched their fists, fired up to chase their dreams. Musk gave one final nod, then walked off stage. His words would stay with them forever. The next Elon Musk might just be sitting in that audience,